errors are something that all of us aquarists make, right? All of us people make errors. It's part of being human. But today I want to talk to you about a massive error that can lead to some really, really devastating outcomes in the fish hobby that experienced fish keepers are far more likely to make than new fish keepers. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what goes into how these decisions get made, how your brain is wired, and in fact, our evolution is set up to believe these things, to do these things. And likewise, we have amazing tools and amazing resources right now like never before with the internet and world knowledge all being shared. But there are some pitfalls with these methods as well, where we have a world of people who are demanding your attention or your allegiance. They are always willing to feed you the information that you want to believe, whether or not that's the information you should believe due to objective facts and truth. And that's where we get into a little bit of trouble. And so today we're going to talk all about that, and we're going to talk about those pitfalls of what happens when you believe something, and the people you're hearing from may believe it in their heart. They may believe it to be so true and to be the quote unquote right way to do something, but it may be based on faulty information, or it may even be based on something like a financial motive or an ego or who knows what. But I want to give you guys the tools to be aware of these things as well as pointing them out. And I am no one to be absolved of this either. You guys, please feel free to fact check me, to check other sources. I encourage you to go out there and check out all the other YouTube channels and resources there are. In fact, I've made another video to make it easier where you guys can actually check out the 12 top sources that I go for content when I'm trying to confirm something I'm researching. And that's things like FishBase or Amazonas Magazine. That's things, like Wikipedia for a quick glance, but I wouldn't trust Wikipedia for in-depth, up-to-date knowledge on fish necessarily. Might start my research there. But that's my whole point, is I want to talk about this overarching issue, and I'm not immune from it. So please, I'd love to hear your opinions on this as well as we talk about what this big mistake is that I'm going to tell you a little later, because first I want to tell you all the main factors that are working together to feed into this problem right now in today's modern society. And on that note, you're watching FISHTORY, and I'm Alexander Williamson, your host, and I hope you guys are having a great day and enjoy this content. So let's jump into the subject a little deeper now. Before we get into talking about this actual massive problem, we need to touch on a few of the smaller problems that are feeding into the issue. And they're problems that are very, very contemporary, that are a part of the YouTube and internet-based hobby today, quite frankly. First one is confirmation bias, believing sources that we agree with. If A, B, C, and D are true, probably E is going to be true too if that same source presents it, right? We don't have time to fact check everything, and it's only natural that this can happen. So it's so important to know where you're getting your information from, and that it's a good source that does that legwork for you in order to figure out what the objective truth, or at least the consensus of the moment, is amongst the experts. And being here as your host at FISHTORY, that is really the vision behind this channel, is I'm trying to curate that for you. Now, you should never trust one source, in my opinion, and please go out, check as many as you like, but that is the goal here. And by clicking that like button, by sharing videos like this, and by supporting the channel in any way, whether that's tuning in or becoming a member and helping me to keep the lights on here, it is all extremely helpful. And I want to thank all of you who have done so thus far into the channel's history. All right, so when we're being fed information from a source that we think is a solid and trustworthy source, this can oftentimes turn into something we call an information silo, or basically you're surrounding yourself and you're consuming information, ideas, and content that is of similar things to what you already know to be true or what you already believe. And so it is not challenging your assertions. And quite to the contrary, we are constantly being tricked and challenged in this day and age, be it by Photoshop images or Facebook posts, AI generated thumbnails, or incorrect and misleading imagery on YouTube or TikTok. Ultimately, creators are now incentivized to get your attention, to get your curiosity. And your attention is more important than your curiosity or teaching you something. Your click is the most important thing of all, and it will come at any cost. And there are very smart people working on this, and everybody's looking at each other, copying the same systems and the same things that work. And lots of research, lots of money has gone into figuring out what gets us to click, what gets us to keep scrolling, and keeps our eyes on the subjects and the kinds of things that we already believe or we want to believe. Now, this has led to titles of infographics or videos that are often really broad or make a shocking statement or make an assertion. And if you read one that makes you have a gut reaction, like you are ready to pile in the comments and say, "You idiot, that is not true," or "That is so true, I'll have to tell you about a time when this happened," beware. That is the best clickbait there is. And that is pulling you in. Now, there's other videos and thumbnails that have plenty of clickbait and that manipulate the truth as well out there. Things like Photoshop thumbnails saying, "I caught a shark in an abandoned pool," when it's really a bala shark that is a cyprinid fish and that is nowhere related to any saltwater shark, not scary. Yet in the thumbnail, it may be a picture of a great white shark jumping up to catch prey. And that's what gets the 5 million clicks, right? So we have this environment going on that is not conducive to the truth necessarily. And that's something to be aware of, whether you get the game or not. But we are being overloaded with lots of information, and some of it's good and some of it's not. We see unbelievable fish, colors that are like, is that even possible? Sizes and fish that have been caught that maybe it's photoshopped. This stuff's not designed to be accurate or allow you to come to an objective truth. This idea is not new, and it's not just on social media. Misinformation has been around since humans, probably. And it is meant to lead you astray, or at the very least, it is meant to lead you coming back to their source of information, because maybe it's more entertaining at the very least. And that is something else to keep in mind. Even if they don't want to lead you astray, they may wholeheartedly believe something that they are teaching or preaching, and it may not be accurate if they're not following things like the scientific method, peer review, and getting information from many sources. So for instance, it would be easy to assume that iron oxidizes to a red color, and therefore when we see iron in water, oftentimes in streams and things, it's a bright red orange color of mineralization. And so maybe you would assume that plants in the aquarium also benefit from this. We know that other things turn red from iron. There's food colorings and dyes and various paints made out of it. But it turns out that just because that is true does not mean that red and iron go hand in hand in the biology of plants. In fact, iron is needed to make red in plants somewhat, but so are all the other trace micronutrients that we feed in fertilizers. And actually, what makes a bright, vivid, incredible red plant, I have a whole side video on it, is actually highlight, low nitrogen, and just a basic amount of iron, of manganese, magnesium, zinc, and the essential micronutrients. So that's one of those facts that may not be easy to deduce just based on facts you've gathered in the past. So a lot of times us relying on logic is not going to be the best way to figure something out. It is probably our best tool unless someone else has figured it out and shared that information with us. And it's kind of how we have to proceed. So it's totally understandable that we can be tricked by this. And evolutionarily, we have systems within our brain that reward us. They give us little bits of dopamine and serotonin, which are those feel-good chemicals, when we take in new information. Or when you reconfirm information you already had and you confirm that to be true, you also get a dopamine boost. So you have all these incentives from excitement and learning something new, or maybe something dangerous, something you disagree with in a title of a video, or something you really agree with to the point where you think you need to stand up for it. All of these are tricking those little reward systems in your brain. And it's been designed all the way from advertising to just really smart people who are on these platforms or who are in entertainment, who are in education. And it can be used to get your attention and to get you to learn things in a great way, or it can lead you astray. So let's touch on a few more points before we get to this big reveal of sorts of the issue that almost everybody listening to this is going to face one day or another, or may have already faced several times. Okay, back on the subject of this huge mistake that happens in the hobby. Here's another example I want you to think of. New hobbyists learn about filters, and when they first come into the hobby, maybe their thought is, oh, I know, a filter takes out the poop and the waste and any debris and bits of stuff floating that looks gross in the aquarium. And as they learn a little bit about aquariums, they'll learn actually a filter, yes, does that, but the more important thing that our filter does is it makes the water clean because we have the nitrifying bacteria. So then you start seeing a filter in a new way. And when you see this, you may start to understand as well that the little slides that come with a lot of filters that they tell you to replace all the time and go buy new ones and literally throw out the old ones, that system is actually not a good system. You're throwing out all that good bacteria. In fact, just kind of banging off the muck and extra debris and putting that old one back in is the best thing you could do for your tank. But then you're in the hobby a little longer, and you may find out that there's other things you can do other than just that filter. And it's not just some black and white rule. Just like fish don't need 1 inch of fish for every 1 gallon of their aquarium space, you'll learn that to be untrue as well. And as you get into the hobby, some things that you think are intuitive aren't so intuitive, but because you've learned those facts and that knowledge, you start to understand it. And by understanding the system of the aquarium as an ecosystem, or as a chemical system, or as a biological system, you understand then new ways to look at the aquarium. And you can think of a filter as a static thing. You can think of a sponge filter. You can think of a canister. You can even look at it as if your filter is your plants and all your surface area. And anything with surface area that's porous or that has texture is going to grow bacteria. And that water will settle. And if you're not moving water constantly, that will settle down into mulm, which then becomes substrate. And that entire substrate can become bacteria, which then can lead you to learn about an entirely new process in the cycle of an aquarium, which is that you can have your substrate both feeding plants and processing waste, storing the nitrogen and using it almost like a battery to feed nutrients and nitrogen to your plants. And it is this full picture. And when you see the fact that you can have plants and that you can have a filter, or you can do any combination of all of those things and still have a system that works, that you start to realize that this is a very nuanced hobby, and that the science of it, you need to understand the system before you can make those logical leaps. So let's talk now about what we call this when you know a little bit of information and you think, great, now I'm going to apply that and I'm going to put it here and it's going to be great. And then it turns out that that system that you learned all about actually doesn't quite work like that, and the whole thing falls apart. And this can happen if we're talking about filtration. It can happen if we're talking about how to breed fish. It can happen about using chemicals in your fish tanks or whatever. You may think, okay, well, vinegar's safe for this or that, but in this amount, maybe it's not. Or the pH in your tank. If your pH is really low, well, then the ammonia is not dangerous. And I may be throwing a bunch of things at you that sound like unrelated facts, and they kind of are, but they are all pieces you will understand once you are fully versed in kind of not just the basics, but a deeper knowledge of the hobby. And once you learn that, you'll have this, oh my goodness, I thought I knew a lot. I thought I understood what was going on, and I was buying the replacement cartridges like a good pet keeper should, but that may not be the case. The same with bettas. You may first learn about them and see they're in little cups, and you know they're surviving in a little cup. It doesn't seem like they could, and it's like, yeah, well, they're okay in there for a time, and then you learn a little more and you realize actually this isn't how they should be kept. They should be kept in probably 5 gallons of water, maybe 10 gallons, who knows? And you can get really passionate about this because you realize this fish has feelings. You interact with this fish, you see what it does, you read about it, you spend time on the issue. But if you talk to somebody who's been in the hobby 10, 20 years, you may find that they actually do keep their bettas in smaller containers, in 2.5 gallon or 2 gallon or 1 gallon containers for certain times of the year or at certain stages of their life. And it may be that they actually know something that you just haven't learned yet, and yet you are so confident that this is the correct way. And it may just be that they're, for instance, conditioning their bettas, that they have a male and a female and they want to breed their bettas, so they have them in 2 smaller cups to limit distractions and to introduce them to one another. Or they're floating them in bags in the same tank, but they're not going to live in that tank forever. Or maybe young bettas are all living together, male and female, but they're siblings, so they're going to get along. And so here you have this trajectory of, you don't know much about bettas, you keep them in a small tank, then you realize, oh, that's terrible. I'm learning about them, I'm empathizing with them, I get to know them, I'm familiar with them. And the graph you see, this pattern, happens with so many things in life, and it actually is an effect in psychology and sociology called the Dunning Kruger Effect, which is that when you're new to a subject and you have a little information, you don't know much at all, obviously. When you feel closer to that, you spend a little bit of time with it and energy into the topic, all of a sudden, going up on the graph, your excitement, your passion, and your belief in it being true, or that your ability to do something, that you are more versed than the average person. Your confidence grows. And over time, something may happen that all of a sudden, the bettas all fight, or the bettas are alone and they won't reproduce, or your betta just sits in the corner of its giant tank, whatever it may be, and you realize, I'm missing something here, there's other information. And in some cases, if it's something like a crash of an aquarium due to something you didn't understand about filtration, it's crushing and people walk away from the hobby. It's very common to do so. But if you understand that this is all just part of it, and that actually it's once you have some knowledge, once you feel confident, once you feel like you're riding a bike, you got rid of the training wheels, you're good to go, you've been doing it for years, you could probably do it with your eyes closed, that's when you're going to crash, is because you're not being cautious. You're not questioning all the new things you're learning and saying, is that right? Is that how that works? And we need to remember to keep that mindset of, how does this work again? Or has new information come out about this? And on this channel, it is my goal to take academic science that is peer-reviewed, meaning other scientists can replicate the methods and they come up with the same answers, the same information. They show you the context, they show you what they did, so that other people can say, hey, wait a minute, something's not right there, or this is what's different between these two examples, and they can pick it apart. Now, if everything's good there, we have a solid scientific method going, and that means that, great, we have an objective truth or fact. But the great thing about the scientific method is it's open to new information or to change. And so we need to stay flexible. And the longer you keep fish, it's very likely that your answer to, oh, I hear you know a lot about X, Y, or Z. I hear you know a lot about cichlids, Alex. Well, not really. I mean, I'm getting taught new things all the time by them. So you realize the minutia and the details that go into any given system, topic, or belief, and how important it is to understand those things and to be open to new information. So I hope you guys see what this massive pitfall is and why it is not the new people that tend to make these mistakes. It is the people that are comfortable or that think they have all the pieces of information and have stopped bringing in new information. They've just started to surround themselves with other like-minded people in their forums, their chats, their friend groups, their fish club, whatever it may be. And they're getting reinforced that, yes, this is the correct way or method or thought on something. And then it turns out that maybe there's another way. And I'm not here to tell you at the end of the day where your logic then will lead you. I just want you to have the facts and the context. And then at the end of the day, we may end up in different places. Some people may say, I never want to see my betta nip the fin of another betta ever. Other people may say, well, in the wild, they live in small puddles oftentimes for half the year. And they have to reproduce, so they're clearly together at some point. And they rough each other up sometimes. And that's part of their natural process. And some people will say, well, I'm okay with that. And others will say, I'm not. I want them to be able to avoid that because they're in captivity in my care. And so it is up to you what to do with the information. But that is why I am here, to hopefully present you that information. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.